But then from your background growing up, that's not exactly true. And what is the definition of health in Ayurveda? It's not absence of disease at all.
All of these people here are really, really, really sick, and they all need to now participate in this medical system where we have intensive care units and surgical theaters and IV drips of medications and all these intense therapies that we're doing.
What have you changed? So what was your diet like before and then after?
And the second concept is the Pareto principle. Let's focus on the 20% of the information where you can focus your energy that's going to get you 80% of the result.
In that study, that person in the middle might not even exist. Maybe we just had the people on one spectrum and the other, so the average is middle, but that person might not actually exist. And what would you say would be the priority for women?
How do you empower yourself to really understand and become more introspective about what's going on with you? Because no one's going to care more about what's going on with you than you.
Hi, my name is Aggie, and this is Biohacking Bestie. The one-stop shop for a modern queen, where you can find biohacking courses, self-growth courses, and where you can find the most incredible community of women so you can hit all of your biohacking goals and beyond. Welcome back to Biohacking Bestie. Today, I'm so honored to have Dr. Shah on the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is so nice being here.
I love your energy. You never know, because we haven't met personally before. First time. And sometimes it's funny because you meet people in wellness and then you meet them in person. And you're like, oh, I don't know. But you have
That never happens.
Oh,
just
sometimes.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It does, I know.
But what I love about it, you walked into my house and it's just so warm, so welcome, so kind.
Well, thank you.
Have whatever it is that you're doing or drinking or eating, it's working because you just have this beautiful aura about you.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much.
And I want to promote more of that concept that it's like, cool, I'm glad that your labs are great, but if you don't make people's nervous system feel good, maybe you're not biohacking the right way if everyone around you is quite stressed. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think part of biohacking is not just hacking your biology, but it's also hacking your spirituality, your aura, your mindset. There's so much to it that all kind of fits together, right?
100%. And I think it's really hard for me because I feel like there is this big division between people that follow the data and they love their numbers. And, you're a doctor, so you know that it's very much data driven and it's like studies. And it's like, well, there's no medical paper on that. And then I get to interview people that are into Ayurveda or Chinese medicine, which I very much strongly believe in. And a lot of them don't really embrace the science because I was like, well, 4,000 years ago, we used to do this. And so that's what we do right now, which I think environment has slightly changed. And there are very few people that bridge the two. And it's like, why don't we just pick the best of both worlds? We don't have to pick or be married to just one duality. And then you appear and your dad has the background in Ayurveda. I was an Ayurvedic doctor in India. Yeah. And then you have a medical background. So what does one do with that combination?
Yes, I've been embracing this duality, I feel like, since I was 4 years old because I grew up in an Indian family, very religious, very spiritual. Dad was an Ayurvedic doctor, like you mentioned. And then I grew up in heavy science as well. I went to medical school at a really early age and did lots of research and training and had all the science background too. But I think, what I noticed being from both worlds, at a high degree for a very long time, because my dad was always, telling me about the things that he would recommend and he would do, and the Ayurvedic cures versus the medical cures. And I think what that gave me was a unique perspective that neither one is completely right or complete, right? Yeah. You need both. You need spirituality. You need some basis in the earth and the nature. And then you also need the science, right? And so when you can bring those two together, and it's different for every individual person too. Some people need more of one than the other, but you have to have this mindset or this belief that there's definitely positives in both sides of this.
So you're in medical school and you enter the system that is pretty much like a managing disease or trying, health is described as the absence of disease. But then from your background growing up, that's not exactly true. And what is the definition of health in Ayurveda? It's not absence of disease at all.
No, it's the abundance of vitality, right? Is feeling incredible day to day and living in harmony with your brain and with your feelings and your emotions and the environment and the earth and nature. All of that is also health too, right?
Yeah. And it's and Chinese medicine is like the chi, the life force, right? So vitality, life force are different names for the same thing, which is very different to how we describe health in the Western world. So what's going through your mind? You're 20 something years old and you're starting your practice and you feel like maybe you don't exactly fit in with your mindset.
Yeah, I think medical school is very interesting for me because it really was about becoming an expert at diagnosis of disease, right? And so to me, the entire time I was in medical school, I was just thinking, all of these people here are really, really, really sick, and they all need to now participate in this medical system where we have intensive care units and surgical theaters and IV drips of medications and all these intense therapies that we're doing. But really, what happened the 20 or 30 years leading to this point? Where was a focus on health and what's going on in your biology during that time? And so it was really interesting because you got to see like the end result of years of accumulation of poor lifestyle, lack of even thought or any sort of focus on yourself and your own self-care, where that leads you. And it was really rewarding for a long time. I'm a surgeon. I found surgery to be extremely rewarding because we're removing tumors and doing reconstructions. We're removing disease organs. But really, it's just so sad to have to do that in the first place, right? And so I was always talking about, why are we here? Like, there's so much inflammation. Why? There shouldn't be this much inflammation going on in the body if we followed some simple, maybe Ayurvedic principles or Eastern medicine principles.
And so when was that turning point for you in your life, right? When you just realized, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, from one hand, I feel really rewarded professionally and I'm really good at this and I'm really making a difference and helping people live, right? Like saving people's lives. But at the same time, if I were able to talk to people 30 years ago, they wouldn't have to come to me in the first place.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I became a victim of my own kind of circumstance. And I became a very busy surgeon. I was working a lot, super stressed out, working 14-hour days in operating room, mostly sedentary, not sleeping well. And 20 years later, I found myself in a horrible state of health myself. I had completely ignored all of the kind of teachings and the learnings and the intuition I had for 20 years. Diving headfirst into the practice of surgery. And I became, I was 50 pounds overweight. I was on yes. I was almost 250 pounds at one point. I was on 3 blood pressure medications for high blood pressure. I was diabetic and I had an autoimmune disease. So I had many.
What was your autoimmune?
So I had this condition where I was losing some skin and tissue in my scalp and also my skull. It's called coupe de sabre.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's an autoimmune condition that basically just eats away at the tissues of your head until you have a very thin skull layer and very thin tissues in your head. Some people...
That sounds really scary.
It was so scary. It was, you look at pictures, you Google this, you look at pictures like, oh my God, I'm going to look, like I'm really diseased if this keeps progressing. And so it was a point in my life when I was in my early 40s that I was very sick, and I decided I needed to make a major change in my health. It was the same point in life when my son was born. So I got...
beautiful.
Yeah, I had my son a little bit later in life. And so I looked at my circumstances. I was very sick, headed in the wrong direction with my health. And I just had a newborn child and I wanted to be alive long enough to see this kid graduate from high school.
Yeah.
So
How was his
I
name?
had to make a change. His name is Rayan.
Rayan. Okay, cool. Very good. So you have a motivation. Isn't that funny that we need some external motivation to take care of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of was like the wake up sign. So what does one do in a situation like this?
So unfortunately, Western medicine is not the answer. I found that out very quickly. Western medicine is excellent at treating disease and when you're sick. And I think if we all have a mindset shift that only use Western medicine for that if you are sick, do not look to Western medicine to get health, right? And so I was looking to Western medicine for health. So I myself went out and said, I'm going to hire a concierge medical doctor. I went and saw a really expensive concierge medical doctor down the street here in Beverly Hills. And
I can only imagine how much that was.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Add a 0. If you think you came up with a good big number, just add a 0.
Just add a 0 to it. Exactly. And extremely smart doctor. like no complaints about his level of knowledge. However, what I ended up with after, a week of workup and meetings with him was 3 more medications, more pills for me to take, no advice around nutrition, exercise, sleep, nothing. And so I knew that this was the wrong way just from my old knowledge base from my dad about, Ayurveda. And so I decided at that point in time to re-educate myself in the science of health. And I went to many conferences in health, one of them being a conference on nutrition. I became so enamored by the field of nutrition that I was like, I need to learn more. So you get only like a day of nutrition in medical school. So I went and got my nutritionist degree credential. Then I went to a training conference on how to become a personal trainer. Love that.
No, I didn't know that about you.
Yes. So I got my NASM certificate to become a personal trainer. And then I just kept going and going.
I tried doing that. It's actually quite hard.
It is hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I tried doing it. I'm like, I need more time in my life to do it properly. I thought it would be way easier, but it's not. So
yeah, I mean, it's like thick textbooks.
You don't it's realize. It's a lot. I thought it would be much easier. So I bought the course and I was like, oh, wow, like this is a real thing.
But it's so crazy because I'm reading these textbooks. I'm like, why didn't I learn this in medical school? Like, this is what we should learn in medical school is how to, keep your muscles healthy, how metabolism works, all of these things, And so really those kind of disciplines led me through a circuitous path 10 years ago through finding out about functional medicine, which is root cause medicine. I went to one of the first seminars on this that our friend Mark Hyman taught as well when he was still teaching these himself, and just completely opened my eyes to we're really focusing on the wrong side of this whole equation in Western medicine. And so using functional medicine, I was able to get myself healthy in like 8 months. And so I was like, this is incredible. Wow. Yeah, I lost like 45 pounds. I got off all of my medications except for one pill. My autoimmune disease stopped. Like within 4 weeks, my autoimmune disease stopped.
What have you changed? So what was your diet like before and then after?
My diet before was embarrassing because I thought I was eating the right things, but it was a very like high carbohydrate, gluten-filled diet. And I didn't realize kind of the definition of processed food, believe it or not. So back then I was still eating a lot of processed food, but thinking I was eating healthy. And so, the entire center of your supermarket, there's a lot of stuff that tricks you into thinking it's healthy when it's just processed garbage. And I was thinking a lot of that, like the bars and the powders and the pre-made meals were going to be healthy. And that was my entire diet. And so I changed my diet completely around. I did it like an elimination type of diet. And I think that's what stopped my autoimmune disease for sure. And of
was
course,
it like GAPS diet or low FODMAP? What was?
Yeah, so I actually followed Hyman's protocol.
Okay.
Yeah, his 10-day detox diet.
Yeah.
And I did that, which is kind of a combination of some of these diets. And I think for me, it was just really probably what worked the best was just the elimination of the ultra processed foods that really got me on a better path.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what have you, I know you have the 80-20 rule, right? Like it's a Pareto's law. Can you just explain a little bit more about that? Because like, what have you eliminated? What have you added? And how does it matter?
Yeah. So since then, that time, to continue the story, because it like completely goes into this, is I decided then to change my career from surgery to doing this type of medicine, right? And so whether you call it functional medicine or longevity medicine, whatever you want to call it, I felt like this is where I could really make an impact and a difference. So over the last few years, I've been changing my career and now I'm completely into longevity medicine. And what I find is every patient I talk to, they're so super confused with all the information out there. So there's so much information, right? And you just scroll your Instagram feed. One person swears by the carnivore diet. Another person swears by the vegan diet. It's like one person swears by high intensity training. Another person swears by strength training. And
and then people, they're like, you need to do no carb or low carb. The other person's like, oh my God, like you need a certain amount of carbs because otherwise you're going to go crazy. And I literally, funny that you say that because I did a post about it, that just like the more I speak to people, the more you realize that there's the amount of information that I think for every advice on social media, out of, just random people just swearing by something, you realize that there isn't medical, it's not backed by science. It's just someone's personal experience, which is fair because I think we're all entitled to our personal experience and what works for you, but just what works for that particular person most likely won't work for everybody. And it's not proven by science.
Yeah, that is so well stated. And the way I talk about that with my patients is you are an N of one. And so when I say N of one, I talk about medical research, right? There's all levels of medical research. And if you follow medical research and health influencers, you're talking about randomized control studies all the time, right? Randomized control studies are what happens when you do a certain intervention on a group of people, and then you figure out what works for the average person in that group. But whenever you have an average person in a study result, there's this kind of bell-shaped curve almost of people that are not the average. And some people fall to the right and some people fall to the left. And so
Let's just have an example.
Yeah.
So what could that be? Let's just say carnivore diet. So we can just say that a lot of people can heal their autoimmune with carnivore diet.
Exactly.
And so we're going to say like there's some studies that proves that it's true.
Right.
And so I watch a reel and I'm like, oh my God, I should eliminate all vegetables and all fruit, right? And I should just eat animal-based products. So I start doing that and I might not feel well, but like, wait, but I just watched this video that says it's actually there's a study on that. And so let's talk about the behind the scenes of a study, and you as a doctor understand how to read it. And
absolutely,
how can we navigate that as normal human beings that aren't, as educated as you?
Right. And it's actually, this is the part that I think the concept of knowing, if you look at a bell-shaped curve and knowing there's an average in the middle, and then there's what we call one standard deviation. So that's like right on the sides of the middle. Two standard deviations is kind of like the bell shape, kind of the curve here. So let's use your carnivore diet example, right? So for most people in the middle, the carnivore diet would neither be beneficial or bad. Okay. Like you could do it for a little while. And if you could stick to it, maybe you'll feel a little bit better. Maybe you'll be like, this isn't for me. And I'm going to go back and add some vegetables, right? And have like a balanced diet, right? The middle is the balanced diet.
Yeah.
Now, some people get the carnivore diet and just that elimination of something, like a carnivore diet is a low FODMAP diet, right? If you eliminate those foods, your gut inflammation gets better. And now you feel an incredible benefit to this carnivore diet because you've decreased gut inflammation and you're in some ketosis. So you might have the mental benefits of that as well. And so you feel incredible on the carnivore diet. Then there's the other side of this curve that they go on the carnivore diet, their cholesterol shoots through the roof. They start developing coronary artery plaques and they start having digestive issues and they start getting
liver
constipated.
is just like,
Exactly, yeah. And so those people certainly should not be on the carnivore diet. Should they be on a vegan diet? Also probably not true, right? Like maybe, once again, those are people that need to be on the balanced diet. So every single patient I see in my office, I explain this concept to them, like, forget about everything you've heard. We're going to focus on two major concepts. That is, number one, you are an N of one. We're going to figure out what side of this study your biology wants to be on, and we're going to go heavy on that because that's what's going to work for you, right? We're going to eliminate the bad stuff and do all the good stuff that's going to work for you. And the second concept is the Pareto principle. Let's focus on the 20% of the information where you can focus your energy that's going to get you 80% of the result, right? So on diet, that 20% or on nutrition, actually, that 20% of information is eliminating ultra-processed food. That's what's going to give you the most result. I don't care if you're carnivore, vegan, in the middle, whatever you want to, whatever dietary pattern you want to follow, eliminating ultra-processed food is where you need to put your energy number one and for first and foremost. If you're eating a carnivore diet and it's mostly processed meats, that's horrible for you, right?
Yeah.
You're much better off doing a non-processed food diet with some vegetables in it.
Yeah.
And so I think once you recognize those two concepts and you base decisions based on that rather than getting religious on any one side, you're going to do so much better.
Because if it's randomized, that also means that out of the 20 people, this is the average. But in that study, that person in the middle might not even exist. Maybe we just had the people on one spectrum and the other, so the average is middle, but that person might not actually exist in real life.
That's exactly true. Like, what if a lot of people should be on the vegetarian diet and a lot of people should be on the carnivore diet, and that middle person doesn't really even exist?
Right.
That's not the truth, because we know the middle person, the omnivore.
But like in theory, that would be one of the things that we can just say, like, whether it's eliminating something completely or just eating it to a massive extent. Right. So it's really fascinating. And I think, what do you feel, what comes up in your body when you see all of the people on social media, like sharing all of the information that, they share studies, they're out of context. I feel like to every argument or to every diet, there's the flip side. And I just feel like that has been really damaging to what's going on out there.
I agree with that, but I also think there's a lot of benefit to it as well, because at least now we're having conversations and it's not just the government and media feeding us the information.
I love that you see the positive.
Yes. Look, what got this country sick is 50 years of misinformation guided by our government and the media that were basically bought out by big pharma, big food. And that's all the information we got. We thought, you know what? The government said that the food pyramid is a good thing for us. So let's eat the standard American diet and follow the food pyramid. And that's what got us sick, because we did not have access to information through social media, through what you're doing in podcasting. We can make our own decisions. We can listen to the point, counterpoint, and understand that there's different ways of approaching a problem. And once again, you have to figure out what's going to work the best for your biology. And the best way to kind of figure out what's going to work the best for you is to understand how, I call this a concept of becoming the CEO of your own health.
Ooh, I love that.
Understanding how to track your own health using biomarkers and technology, basically, to see what interventions are working for you. So to answer your question, I do get kind of this visceral reaction, like, oh, I can't believe he said that, like cringe reaction sometimes. I'm like, well, at least he's putting it out there, and maybe people can, you read the comments, you're not right at all, you're wrong. Some people get real religious about it, but at least people can see the back and forth on this.
And I think the upside I see that it's like in the sea of over information or these informations that are completely contradictory, you start to like think that, oh, I don't know who to believe in. And then you remember, I should believe myself and see, what does it feel in my body? Like, okay, let me try carnivore for 2 weeks. How do I feel? Let me try being vegan. How do I feel? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like at the end of the day, it comes back to your very first principle that it doesn't really matter if you as an expert or whoever, Dr. Mark Hyman tells you like this is the right thing. You can be saying, okay, have all the eggplant in the world, but you might not feel good after nightshades. And then you realize that maybe at the end of the day, I should just listen to myself because it doesn't make me feel good, right? Absolutely. Or I can have an eggplant allergy, right? So it's like there's so many nuances to that information. So I think it's really important. What's the one like advice out there that drives you crazy in nutrition that's on social media and you feel like it's keep getting repeated and you feel like, oh, like if I could just like these 2 or 3 concepts are killing me when I see them online?
I think the things that kill me on social media is when someone takes like whatever latest biohacking modality you have and tells you about the science like it's the truth. You know what I mean?
Give me an example.
I hate to like slam certain devices or anything like that.
Oh, get it.
Okay, I'm not going to slam any one certain device here, but like I feel like people that really focus on like different types of water. Obviously, you want clean water. You want water that doesn't have toxins in it.
And you're not talking about Kangen water at all. I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, and then it's like, if you're not drinking this certain type of water, or utilizing this certain device, you're going to be headed toward certain death, and that's just not true. Like humans have survived thousands and thousands of years with water from nature, right? Yeah. And so I think that there's a lot of extrapolation of the science that happens in social media that I think once you see something that seems biohackerish, then it's a good idea to really look at the data and science. And just because it seems like someone is utilizing a device and shouting it from the rooftops that it's beneficial doesn't mean it doesn't work. It could work for sure. I just think there's too much of an expectation sometimes of what these devices can really do sometimes.
They're the 20% that they don't really move the needle. Would you? Because let's just unravel that, because I think a lot of people have this idea like with water that you need to drink highly alkaline water because the idea that your body has to be highly alkaline. But what about stomach acid and having to have acidity in our stomachs to be able to digest? Because if we don't have acidity, then parasite can go through, we can get SIBO and all the other gut issues and whatnot. So
yeah. How do you break that down? Exactly.
Yeah. How do you explain to someone like, should we have alkaline water or no?
I mean, I think the alkaline water recommendations are overstated for sure, because you're right. The minute you put water in your mouth and it goes into your esophagus and then into your stomach, it's going to be exposed to acid, right? And so that by definition is going to change some of the properties of the water. So I don't see how you get over that hump. Now there is some science that shows alkaline water in a science experiment is absorbed more readily into a cell. So it goes into the cell more readily, and therefore the cell can get intracellularly hydrated better. Does that really happen in our bodies? I don't know. And it's hard for me to make the mental leap into seeing how that could be true.
I love that you're like super practical, because I think a lot of people that like one of the reasons I say in my book that biohacking seems like it's golf. It feels like it's a lot of rich men, and you just like, you have to have $1 million to even get to play. And I think bringing it down to like what actually moves the needle, what doesn't. Let's just talk about that.
Right.
What of the modalities that are free that you absolutely love? What are the modalities that are a waste of money? Because I think it's worth talking without mentioning a specific device. And what's worth investing?
So I think some of the stuff that's free is going back to looking at how our ancestors lived, because that's how our biology got programmed over thousands of years, right? So what did they do? When they woke up, they immediately went outside the cave. They exposed themselves to sunlight. They were outside a lot of time walking around. Humans are a wandering species, so they walked. They didn't have shoes on a lot of times, so they exposed themselves to the ground, and they became one with nature. I think there's so much power in that, and that goes back to Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, all the things that we were talking about. So I think having some sort of morning kind of routine or ritual where you incorporate just getting back to nature is super effective and helpful. And there's science around this, around obviously things like vitamin D levels and low sunlight affecting our circadian biology. So I love doing things like that, right? And so I love making sure that once a week I get out and do a hike and just get out and into nature. I love also having a routine around my sleep, right? So making sure all the lights are dimmed, and I actually have red light bulbs in my house, so I go to red light. So having kind of a sleep routine. I get rid of my phone 30 minutes before, I keep it 2 rooms away from me. So those kind of things I think are free and really do move the needle.
And also these so as we progress to some a little bit of more of an investment, those red bulbs, you can get them on Amazon for I think $17. So it's not a big investment, but they make a massive difference in how you sleep. I only use red light in the evening. I'm just like obsessed. I feel like especially when you travel, it gets so hard because the bathrooms have the most obnoxious lights, and you're like, why? Because I can't wash my face with the biohacking glasses on, so I always do it in the dark. It's actually quite ridiculous because it's hard when you travel and you want to as a woman take your makeup off, and you it's the studio light almost when you travel, and it's not at 10 p.m.
I have a gift for you that I'm going to send it to you. Yeah, it's just a light that I travel with, and it does yellow and red, and so it's so
perfect.
Nice. And it's battery operated, and it's perfect for travel.
Okay, amazing. I love these hacks. What else would you add to your routine? What are the things that you swear by, and what are some of the things that you have tried and you feel like they're kind of a waste of money? Okay,
so the other thing I think everyone needs to consider adding to their routine is an egg timer. Okay, and I say this, yes, you're like, wait, what? An egg timer that you can set to 45 minutes. So whenever you're at work and you're sitting there typing away on your computer, whatever you're doing at work, every 45 minutes you should stop, get up and move around and disconnect from what you're doing. Focus your eyes on a faraway object. And if you're if you're on your computer all day, it's so important for a multitude of reasons. Number one is we know that sedentary behavior is leading to a massive increase in mortality and morbidity for humans. And so we're getting more and more sedentary as our species progresses. The best way to counteract the negative behaviors of being sedentary is by what's called an exercise snack, which is a very well-researched phenomenon in movement science, where after 45 minutes, if you move around even for 5 minutes, you don't have to exercise, just getting up and moving, it counteracts the negative mortality of being sedentary.
Speaking of light bulbs, I have such a hard time getting my parents to move because they're retired and my mom's knitting all day. I'm like, Mom, go for a walk. And so she started going on one walk a day. I'm like, no, you kind of have to move. The egg timer is the most incredible idea.
It is. I love this thing. And guess what else? So stress also is negatively impacting us, right? And so stress becomes a biological problem when the level of stress that you have leads to a heightened cortisol level that stays high. Because what happens is when your cortisol stays high and it continues to stay high, your body resets itself to always having a high cortisol level. So the next time you get stressed, it goes even higher, okay? But if in 45 minutes, if you stop doing what you're doing and you let your cortisol levels come down a little bit by moving around, doing a little bit of breath work, your body never has an opportunity to reset cortisol to a higher level.
Wow.
Yeah. So that way you avoid all these problems of high cortisol causing metabolic disease, causing stress, anxiety, even leading to, all sorts of biological problems. It's from high cortisol and adrenal fatigue as well. So all these things can be avoided. And lastly, the eyeball thing. Having your eyes focus far away.
Oh yeah, I want to talk
your
to
vision.
It's how this beautiful serendipity that you're in my house and you see that one of the big things I wanted to have is to have a very far away view.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be on top of the hill. And I literally was talking to my husband yesterday. I was like, I just heard Andrew Huberman sharing a study that it's good for you, but I need to learn what's happening biologically in the brain and what's happening to the hormones. And then you just mentioned it. So I was like, please share more because I've heard this before, but I just don't know what's happening in our brain.
Yeah, that's exactly, and so what happens, really focusing far away, it does a couple of things. I'm sure it does something in our brain as well, but really it helps your eyeballs and the muscles around your eye accommodate to moving again. Because if they get stuck in one position for a long time.
Because it's like tunnel vision, fight or
Exactly.
flight versus rest and digest when you move the eyeballs, right? Okay, cool.
Exactly. So you switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic as well. So so all great things if you just stop every 45 minutes and do something. And you can further this by just having a set of dumbbells around or a box that, a jump box that you can jump on and just do a few box jumps, maybe lift your dumbbells a little bit. All that stuff can even protect your muscle mass. Now you are improving your muscle mass retention, which, we're genetically programmed to lose muscle mass after the age of 40. So especially if you're 40, you're going to improve how much muscle mass you have by taking that 45-minute break as well. Wow. So many benefits. And an egg timer, like $5, you can get an egg timer.
Yeah.
So cheap way to biohack.
What's not worth the investment?
I think there's all of these pieces of gym equipment that cost thousands and thousands of dollars that convince people that they are, being healthy by buying these pieces of gym equipment, right? And we've gotten so far off the deep end with how much money we spend on our home gyms that I feel like we're not doing what we should be doing, which is getting outside and just, maybe putting a rucksack on and going for a hike. That's so much more beneficial than spending hours on like a high-tech piece of gym equipment. So
that's
I know I try to keep it like low tech if possible, I mean, look, it's nice to have fancy stuff. I totally get it.
And so let's get to them because I think it's like I just invested in a beautiful sauna and cold plunge and want to have one at home and just like a high-end. I mean, I like my toys, biohacking toys, because I just feel like at the end of the day, I see such a massive impact on my nervous system. So I'm like, why would I invest? People spend $7,000 to $10,000 on a TV. No offense, it's just not me. But I'm like, wouldn't you spend that money on a sauna and have like a spa-like experience every day that like makes you feel so relaxed, and then you have such a deep sleep and you feel so great the next day, and then you need a coffee and you do more and you make more money and da. You know what I mean? Like when you think that the spiral, I'm like it's so many great benefits.
So many great benefits.
I'm all for it, and I think it's like that's like a good thing to strive for. So like, what about some of the more expensive toys? And if you can't afford them, you can always visit Next Health, which I'm leading to. But what are some of your favorites that you swear by?
So like you, I invested in an infrared sauna and a cold plunge at my house. And it was not cheap, but just like you, I have such an incredible nervous system reaction. And not only does it help my sleep and make me feel like I'm, have more energy, all of that good stuff, but also I think switching my routine from an hour of watching TV to an hour of doing self-care, it's so empowering. You just feel so much better about your day and how it went. And you feel so much more positive about how the day went just by doing those two things at the end of the day. So I just had to have it at home. And so that's why I do it.
And it's so funny. So like I had a beautiful, like just this past week, I get tired at like 5 p.m. because I start my day early. So around 5 p.m. I feel like, okay, now I've learned that I don't need to work till 9 p.m. I want to take a pause. And so I have early dinner around 4:35. And then 3 days ago, after dinner, I was like, I just want to watch some, movie or whatever, just the documentary about the Olympics, actually. So spend the next 2 hours going from quite tired to quite awake, right? So at 8:30, I was like, wow, I'm actually quite awake now, way more awake than I was at 5. And then we're like, oh, now it's going to take me an hour to almost wind down from that experience. Fast forward to yesterday, same thing. I got a little tired at 5, spent an hour doing my wellness session. And at 6, I was like, wow, I could really fall asleep now. Yeah. And I realized that it's just like, it helped me relax even more. So I went to bed at, I think 7:30 yesterday. And I woke up at 5 and I was like, oh my God, I would have never gone to bed this early because I would overstimulate myself with phone and TV and whatnot. The moment you take away the electronics, you realize how tired you actually are.
Yeah, exactly. And you sleep so much better. You get more deep sleep,
more
REM sleep. And it's not practical for everyone, but I do think that putting an hour of self-care into your day makes such a huge difference. And I try to get my patients to switch from 4 hours of TV a day to 3 hours and do an hour of self-care, And so it's really just where you put your time, because we all have limited time, and reprioritizing your time to doing some of these things. It doesn't have to be sauna cold plunge. There's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah. And for me, it's sad because I don't think I've ever gone to bed at 7 p.m. I could, living in LA. It was like the first time probably, so maybe just coming back from like a trip when you're jet lagged, as like coming from Europe. But isn't it funny that it's just such an odd experience to go to sleep when you're sleepy? I have this illusion that I have to wait till 10 to go to sleep, even though I'm really tired. Yeah. Like almost I have to wait to go to sleep because it feels weird to go to bed early. And when you realize, wow, like my body clearly needed an extra few hours of sleep, and just let her
your body, let your body do what it wants to do. So it's so funny because I saw this meme the other day that it said, I'm the kind of person that if you text me at 9:50 p.m., I'm going to text you back in the morning at 5 a.m. because I'm in bed every day by 8:30, 8:45, and I'm asleep by 9:30.
Yeah, I go to bed early, and I also get off my phone. That's like one thing that I really need. It's not like because I have this amazing willpower. It's because if I don't, I just won't sleep. So
it's incredible how much that changes your life. When you put some distance between the time that you get off your phone and the time you get into bed, and then on the morning side, the time you wake up and the time you grab your phone, whether that distance is 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 or 30 minutes, it's so powerful. It's like a magical change into your life. And most people have no idea the power of that.
Because it is, I have to say, I don't have the willpower or self-control to create that space if my phone is on my bedside table. Like, it's really hard, let's be honest.
It's impossible.
Why would you even exercise your willpower or self-control? Yeah. I have my phone in complete other room.
Me too.
Right? And I don't even, I have a separate alarm. And in the evening, I just don't charge my phone, so it dies by 6 p.m. or 7. So I'm like, okay, I'm not charging it. It's dead. That's it. I have to go old school, So I'm 37 and spent most of my life still without a phone, right? Yeah. So and I was fine, and I didn't feel like I'm gonna die, or it's just now we have this big fear to leave the house without a phone. Is that funny? Because you used to leave the house without a phone, and you didn't feel like you're gonna have, I don't know,
a nervous breakdown. Exactly.
But it feels that way this time. If you spend a day without a phone, it just feels super challenging. You feel like you're on an adventure.
Yeah. It's so funny because you see these funny videos of people that forget something in the car, and they run back and they grab their phone, they go into the store, and their baby's still in the back seat. You can forget your baby in the back seat of a car, but not your phone. Yeah. And it's just it's so incredible how tied we are to these devices right now. But you're right. This just happened in this moment of time in the last 15, 20 years. Before that, you never left. And you didn't care where your phone was, right? Because you didn't have one.
And you could leave the house without feeling like you're in danger. I feel like if I left the house for a whole day without a phone, I would feel almost in danger. I don't know how to explain it, but it feels...
You'd be lost.
What if I get lost? What if I need some help? So it creates a lot of fear in a way, right? It makes you feel that you are in a potential danger. The phone's going to save you. But I'm so down to get a flip phone soon. There's a whole new wave of people trying to get a flip phone, because I think we're all just exhausted from being always available.
I totally agree with you. There's a great book by Colin O'Brady. He wrote a book called 12-Hour Walk. Have you read this book?
No.
No, it's great. It's all about going for like a 12-hour walk with no electronics on you. No, you don't listen to podcasts. You don't keep your phone on you. And the first hour of that, it's so disconcerting, like you mentioned. Like you're like, am I going to survive this 12-hour walk?
Yeah.
But you always survive the 12-hour walk, and you completely disconnect. You're with your own thoughts, no podcast, nothing. And you just kind of get into being one with nature again, observing yourself, observing the environment. It's a game changer.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. Like I really want to do this right now, but it feels like very intimidating in a way.
It does feel intimidating, but I guarantee you do it, it'll change your life.
Wow. Okay, cool. I have a lot of questions, but I want to get to Next Health and how did you even start that, and what is Next Health for people that, aren't from the US and don't know how big you guys are.
So Next Health is my new practice. So when I stopped doing surgery, I wanted to practice this new type of medicine. I call it health optimization and longevity. It ties in the best of Western medicine with functional medicine and a focus on the basics, things like nutrition, exercise, sleep, hormones, stress, anxiety, all that. And we put it all together under one roof. So when you come in, you get your full biomarkers tested, genetic testing, we do scans, and you sit down with our practitioner with all the results, and we help create a plan for you to optimize your health, basically, to live longer and to improve your health span. And we also have on site treatment modalities that are very difficult to find. So things like we talked about sauna, cold plunge. Most people don't have access to those. We also have hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We have ozone therapy. We have LED light therapy. We have quite a few different IV therapies and protocols as well.
But also some more of the high end. You have the peptide therapy, one of the first people to have peptides. You have the plasma pheresis.
Plasma exchange.
Yeah. What's the official name? Plasma pheresis?
Yeah, plasmapheresis.
Yeah. Which I'm definitely coming for because I want to learn more about that. But like, what a brilliant idea, by the way. And just like literally the what's next for health.
Right.
Like that's it. This is how we manage health. This is a place to manage health. If you're sick, go to a hospital. If you want to be healthy, come and stay with us. After all of the blood work, like what is like the ideal path for someone who comes to your clinic?
It's different for everybody, depending on what we find in your blood work. However, the one thing I try to get we have members, and so all the members to do is come and do what I call the longevity circuit, which is come and spend an hour and a half, 2 hours with us once a week, where you do the hyperbaric oxygen, some sort of IV therapy. And you don't always have to do the IV therapy, but we do different things that could be beneficial, things like IV nicotinamide riboside. We have this thing called the PK protocol. So different things to try and see how it affects your biology and the way you feel. Then you go into the hyperbaric oxygen chamber for 45 minutes, and then you do the LED light, the sauna, and then the cryotherapy. And that, I call that the longevity circuit, once a week or once every 2 weeks. So beneficial to have that self-care time, And then every quarter we recheck your blood work to just see how things are progressing, making sure your blood work is going in the right direction.
How is that different? Because, one of my biggest missions is that, like, when I got into biohacking, it did feel like it's quite intimidating for women. And a lot of times I heard advice like, okay, like, you're pretty much, just like men, like it's not that different. And we obviously have the cycle. And I'm yet to find a woman who hasn't had a hormonal issue in her life. A lot of us struggle with thyroid. I don't know if it's the same for men, but the women that I know, it's like we represent 80% of autoimmune diseases. So I'm just curious, like now that you have all that data from your patients, what would you say would be the priority for women in the wellness space? Would you focus more on detoxification because we're exposed to so many toxins, or how is the protocol different for men than women?
Yeah, so I think for women, you're right. There are more hormone-related topics that we need to discuss. We also see iron-related topics that women suffer from as well, deficiencies and some micronutrient deficiencies as well.
More so than men.
More so than men, exactly. And so we tailor the therapy based on what we're finding in the blood work. And so I think for women, especially on the hormone side, it changes so much depending on what part of life you're in, right? And so we deal with we help women deal with their menopause a lot of times. And so we have an entire hormone program that we put people on. And so it's been extremely beneficial for women to be on this hormone program. And to be clear, we don't put every single woman on hormones. That's not what it's all about. It's to test, make sure you're optimized. There's 50 other things you can do to optimize your hormones before you get put on hormone replacement therapy. And so we just kind of go down that path with women as well. I think also women need to be very careful about what they're exposing their body to, on both on toxins and also to stressors, because exposing your body to certain stressors at the wrong time of life can overwhelm your cortisol system, and then you get all the negative effects of that. And so the perfect example of that is something like intermittent fasting, right? I think most of the studies in intermittent fasting were done on men. When you look at the same results in women, you can find hormone disturbances that happen with using intermittent fasting incorrectly, or, especially at the wrong time. And
I think it's sorry to interrupt, but I think it's what I wanted to add, because it's like, I think that fasting is great. When I think of fasting, we should just have an earlier dinner, not go into half of your day without eating. That's one. Second, I also think that women have this added layer of psychology because we're bombarded with like this constant diet information. And so most women that I've worked with, the moment you tell them fast, they're gonna undereat and go to such extremes. And then it's almost like it's like an addiction. I don't want to say it turns into anorexia, but it turns into, oh wait, it's good to do 14-hour fast. I'm going to do 18 hours and every single day. That's not how you fast, right? And so that really annoys me because I feel like the theory is great, but when you get to speak to an everyday woman and see how much they struggle with mentally, it's probably safer for them not to fast, which is a bit of a shame because I think giving gut a reset is great, especially having an earlier dinner and whatnot. But it is that added layer of psychology that women have to deal with versus men.
It is so true. It's absolutely true. And also I think on the fasting front too, women have to be very careful not to lose skeletal muscle mass as well.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And so not having enough protein intake is very detrimental. That's why women have a higher rate of osteoporosis, is because they have less muscle mass from undereating protein and not having enough strength training in their life too. So fasting can always be a net negative if you're losing skeletal muscle mass, right?
Yeah. So, and I think one of the biggest mistakes I also made is it's like, I'm not sure if you know Jessie, the glucose goddess, and it's like eating food in the right order. And I was like, oh my God, the fiber, the fat, then the protein, and then carbs. And I was like, this is great. So I started teaching all of the women. And then I started interacting with those women. And I'm like, wait, you're eating what you think is fiber, which is not, because they're carbs. And then you have the fat. So it's basically fat and carbs is already a big part of our diet. And then you eat protein last and you don't eat enough because you're full. And I'm like, okay, this eating in the right order on a practical level for a woman just doesn't work. So I was like, no, please start with protein. Yeah. Start with protein. It's
men
not going to
women.
Yeah, men and women. It's not going to raise your blood sugar. So when you realize, cool, in theory, that sounds great. In practice, people have this like massive salad that's full of other things because it's a bean salad with chickpeas. And I'm like, okay, like fiber, but also carbs. And like, it's like, it gets a little complicated. And so I think it's just like only until you start working with people, you realize it's like, oh, actually the nuance. I'm like, start with protein, have your 30 grams, especially for breakfast and dinner for muscle protein synthesis and lift weights. So
yeah, exactly. We're on the same page right there.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think, women also should consider using some advanced tracking devices, things like a continuous glucose monitor, maybe an Oura ring or some sort of Whoop band or something, because I feel like women are so much more in tune with their bodies and they know what causes these changes in their biomarkers and their in their HRV, and they can pinpoint it so much easier than men can. And so I almost find that women get much more data out of these things than men do.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love that. Yeah, I feel like we're naturally, obviously, a little bit more connected to our intuition, but also like historically, we've just been like naturally good at this. We already had to figure out our hormones and cycle and how we're feeling and why we're feeling that way. Is my cycle coming? Is it delayed? So I think we're constantly in this like conversation with our body. For men, I don't know what has to happen. Like literally for you, like your scalp started falling apart for you to start paying attention.
That's exactly right. You have to get hit by a bus before you
it's
feel like you need to do something, right?
What are you like most passionate about now, and where is Next Health heading towards?
Yeah. So my passion is really about spreading the message that we're talking about today. So, over the last 8 years since I started Next Health, I probably treated a few hundred patients, maybe over 1,000 patients. And so I really feel like there's so much polarization in the talk around health right now. There's so many religious level kind of thought processes. We talked about dieting. It's also true with things like heart health and medications and weight loss. I mean, there's so many taboo subjects that you talk about, and you get so many negative comments on social media and people just completely wanting to take you down, And I really am spreading the message of you need to focus on your own individual biology. You're an N of one. How do you empower yourself to really understand and become more introspective about what's going on with you? Because no one's going to care more about what's going on with you than you, right? I don't care how many concierge doctors you hire, they're not going to care as much as you do. So I want to empower people with the knowledge that they can understand what changes are going to work for them and do this a lot sooner in life, right? I feel that I was 45 when I started making really impactful, big changes. I wish I was doing it when I was in my 30s,
I know.
and even earlier.
And I did in my 30s. I wish I started doing it in the 20s because I felt like, it's a bit of it's a shame, right? Because you feel like the way I feel right now is like, wow. And I feel like it's just like a beginning. And there's so many years of bad diet that I thought it was good because I was eating all the vegan cheeses and vegan burgers every single day with a vegan cheese and, gluten-free breads that were even probably more processed on so many levels because I thought it was eating healthy. And then, that's it takes quite a bit to undo the damage.
Right. And there's so much information now that's actually good information. So just learning at an earlier age and really like reading your book. I think, if every woman picked up a copy of your book and read it, they would have so much more knowledge and do that earlier in life, in your 20s, in fact, right? My dream is to write a chapter for high school biology textbooks that just focuses on health. So you learn this stuff in high school, How does this biology apply to your own health? What should you be doing now? What should you be looking for when you're 30, 40? And what changes do you make over life? I think that's so important. So that's my goal right now is I'm writing a book. I'm starting a podcast as well. I can't wait for you to have you on it.
I would love to.
Thank you. And for Next Health, we are doing incredibly well right now. We're expanding. We have 6 locations right now. We're expanding to over 30 locations in the next 2 years. In 5 years, we'll probably have about 50 locations all over the United States, in Europe, Dubai, Australia, Canada.
Wow. Yeah. I'm very excited about the Dubai location because I spent quite a lot of I skydive, so I go to Dubai for that. And
amazing. I skydive as well.
Oh, no way.
Yes,
I had no idea. Oh, okay, cool. So we have to jump together.
Feeling.
Okay, cool.
In Dubai.
Yes. Just in the desert. So it's one of the reasons why it's, oh my God, amazing. I'm so happy now. Dr. Shah, where can people find you? And where to find Next Health?
Yeah, so Next Health, you go to next-health.com. That's our business website. My website is drshah.com. I'm also on all the socials at Darshan Shah, MD.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You've been such a wonderful guest, and thank you for your energy. Oh, it's been so great.
Thank you. So good
thank
to be
you.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.